Hey there everyone, I'm Katie from Addicted to DIY, and today I'm going to be showing you how I built this queen size platform lift storage bed. I built this bed for the guest bedroom in my mom's new house. She recently downsized to a smaller house, and with the new house, she wanted to add new furniture to it as well. I knew she'd be looking for ways to maximize on storage, so I built her a platform lift bed that can hold totes or whatever else she needs. My friends over at Rockler Woodworking and Hardware were kind enough to supply the bed hardware for this project. I got started by cutting the 3/4 inch plywood down to manageable pieces before moving over to the table saw and miter saw. By the way, you can find the printable plans for this project in the description below. Once I had the plywood cut down to size, I drilled pocket holes into all 4 sides of the headboard face panel and also the ends of the head and foot boards that make up the bed platform. I cut the 2x3s down to size to make up the frame of the headboard, then drilled pocket holes into the top and bottom pieces. I used rough-cut knotty alder for this project, which I milled down to size. While some knots add character, some of the larger ones needed to be filled. I used a 5-minute epoxy to fill the knots, then sanded them down once they were cured. I began assembling the side rails of the bed by gluing down 1x3s to trim out the plywood, then nailing them down with 1 1/4 inch brad nails. Next, I moved on to the headboard. I assembled the frame of the headboard using wood glue and 2.5 inch pocket screws. Once the frame was assembled, I added the plywood face to it. The plywood sits flush with the back face of the frame, so I used scrap wood underneath the plywood to hold it in position while I clamped it. I then attached it to the frame using 1 1/4 inch pocket screws. This step is totally optional, but I wanted to give the bed a little more character with some trim molding. I made my own cove molding using a cove bit on my router, then finished it off on my table saw. You can very easily purchase pine molding, but with the bed being made of alder, I wanted the molding to match. I glued and nailed the molding into place using 3/4 inch brad nails, then got to work filling and sanding the nail holes. I continued this process on the headboard and the other side panel. I really loved the look this gave the bed, and it was worth a little bit of extra work. The 1x3 vertical trim on the footboard overlaps the side rails, so I needed to dry assemble the bed platform so I could accurately place the trim pieces. I glued and nailed them in place using 1 1/4 inch brad nails. Once the vertical trim pieces were in place, I was able to measure and cut the horizontal trim and attach it to the footboard. I completed that with the cove molding as well. To cap off the headboard and footboard, I attached 2x3s. I marked locations where I would be drilling pilot holes, drilled countersunk holes along the length of the wood, then glued and clamped them into place. I attached them with 2.5 inch wood screws. Next, I needed to plug the pilot holes. I used a 1/4 inch dowel and added glue to the end, then tapped it into place with my mallet. Once the glue was dry, I used a saw to trim off the dowels and sanded them down smooth. To finish off the bed, I stained all of the pieces in a golden oak stain, followed by 3 coats of polyurethane in a satin sheen. On assembly day, we took all of the pieces to my mom's house and got to work. We started by attaching the head of the platform with 1 1/4 inch pocket screws. We then moved on to the footboard following the same steps. A little tip, it's always helpful to use scrap pieces of wood when you're clamping finished wood pieces together so the clamps don't damage your finish. I attached the footboard with 1 1/4 inch pocket screws, then moved on to the center support. There are cleats to support the bed frame at the foot of the bed, so we used those as blocks to help determine where the center support would go, then attached it with 1 1/4 inch pocket screws. With the center divider in place, I glued and attached the cleats to the foot of the bed with 2 1/2 inch screws. Once the platform was built, I attached the headboard with 1 1/4 inch wood screws. Now it was time to attach the hardware. I drilled 1/8 inch pilot holes into the cleat using the lift hardware as a guide. I flipped the cleat over and bored 1 inch holes an 1/8 inch deep into the back side for the T-nuts, then used a 25/64 inch drill bit to drive the hole the rest of the way through for the T-nuts to fit. The bed hardware does not come with the bolts to attach these lift mechanisms, so I ran to Home Depot for some 5/16 inch bolts and washers. Once the lifts were attached, I added the cleats to the inside face of the side rails, keeping them flush with the tops of the side rails. I attached them with 1 1/4 inch wood screws. So at this point in the assembly process, we hit a little bit of a roadblock. I'm going to be honest, the instructions for this hardware aren't that great. It took a lot of guesswork right from the get-go as to how to even assemble the bed frame. The letters that matched up with the components didn't correspond with the pictures, so I just ignored the written instructions and just focused on the pictures to build the bed frame. Now, further on in the instructions, it mentions that you can attach an optional cleat to the platform of the bed. What this cleat does is it hides the hardware that allows you to attach the lift mechanism to the platform. So I installed the cleat, we put the platform for the bed frame down, and noticed that the holes didn't line up. So after a little bit of back and forth with my husband going over different ideas of how we could make this work, we came up with a solution, and we're going to show you just how we did it. We used the holes machine drilled into the lift mechanisms and then attached these zinc plated angle brackets to them with 5/16 inch bolts. Make sure you have washers for both sides of the bolt. I'll link to the brackets in the description below. Once the angle brackets were attached, we set the frame onto the platform and then drilled holes into the frame to attach the brackets to it. For this, we used the included screws, washers, and nuts. With the bed frame in place, I attached the gas struts and we were back in business. There are 3 metal handles that attach to the bed, 1 in the front and 2 in the back. The random wing nuts that came with the hardware are not mentioned anywhere in the instructions, but they hold the handles in place. Unfortunately, these wing nuts also hit right on the cleats at the foot of the bed, so I had to grab a drill and a chisel to create a mortise for the wing nuts to fit into so the bed could close all of the way. Once all of that was done, we put the mattress in place and the bed was ready to go. Now my mom will not only have a beautiful new piece of furniture, but also plenty of space to store extra blankets, Christmas decorations, or craft supplies. It's also a pretty great place to hide gifts if you need to. I should note that I did contact Selby Hardware, who manufactures this bed hardware, during the course of this project, and they were very kind and helpful to answer all of my questions regarding the instructions. With regards to the modifications we made, I do plan to contact the company again to see if they have any plans of updating their instructions to correct the errors. I'll be sure to update the description below if and when that happens. If you'd like to build this project yourself, I've linked to the step-by-step tutorial and printable plans which are on my website in the description below. For more project tutorials just like this one, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I've also queued up a few extra videos that I think you might enjoy. Thanks so much for watching.